the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom, but I think that, over time we will see that the Chinese tariffs are unsustainable for China. I've seen some very large numbers over the past few days that show if these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly. And even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs. So remember that we are the deficit country. They sell almost 5 times more goods to us than we sell to them. So the onus will be on them to take off these tariffs. They're unsustainable for them.
And they are saying you guys are not talking about it. So is that true?
Look, they have a different form of government. They're playing to a different audience. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, again, of who's talking to whom. But as I said, I believe for the Chinese, these tariffs are unsustainable.
And very quickly, 2 days ago, you said you didn't know if President Trump had spoken to Xi Jinping. Do you know now?
Again, I would say Caroline and I have a lot of jobs around the White House. Running the switchboard isn't one of them.
Well, it looks like China just officially folded in the trade war. Trump is breaking China as we speak. I mean, this is pretty amazing stuff. And what a way to continue to celebrate the first 100 days of this historic presidency. So come on in, one and all. Great to have all of you here, gang. Let's set the stage for what's happening here, because I do think it's pretty fascinating stuff. So you all remember that back on April 2nd, 2025, President Trump announced reciprocal tariffs on 57 trading partners across the world, some allies, some enemies. But even with tariffs on 57 trading partners, only one seemed directly targeted, and that, of course, was China. The tariffs placed on China by Trump were clearly aimed to impact their economy over all the other nations. He started with a tariff of 34%, which quickly rose as a retaliation to China's retaliations, ultimately going up to 145%, covering all sectors of the Chinese economy. Now, needless to say, these tariffs were not something that China wanted. All right. China's economy is still reeling from their ongoing property fallout. You may remember this. Remember China Evergrande Company. It was once the world's most valuable real estate company. Basically, it collapsed after the company found itself billions of dollars in debt. It defaulted on offshore bonds in late 2021. And so international ratings agencies downgraded its credit status. And as a result, its stock basically lost all of its value. And the shockwaves of Evergrande's collapse hit the whole of the Chinese real estate market. I mean, home prices have dropped sharply in China by about 30% from their 2021 peak. According to economists, both new and resale home prices have declined across major cities, with annual new home prices falling 4.8% as early as 2025. Sales volumes also contracted, hitting developers' revenues and local government finances. So needless to say, their economy is still reeling from the Evergrande fallout. And the last thing Beijing wanted was this trade war with the United States, especially given, as you heard at the beginning, that we are the debtor nation in that exchange. China exports to the United States are double what the United States exports to China, meaning China's economy will inevitably be the one that suffers a lot more than the United States from these trade tariffs. And many analysts are expecting the Chinese economy to actually contract by as much as 2.4% as a direct result of this trade war. And so many have been saying quite openly that China is, when all is said and done, and no question, a very formidable economy, number 2 economy in the world, no question. But China really is in no position to fight a prolonged trade war with Trump and the United States. Let's be honest, we're not getting any younger. And if you want to look and feel your best, you need to check out Pure Health Research. They have 45 premium health supplements designed to help with your every health goal, whether it's boosting your energy or trimming belly fat or supporting healthy blood sugar or pumping your testosterone up or even reducing swelling in your legs. Pure Health Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients backed by clinical research and manufactured right here in the good old USA. And here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. All you have to do is go to purehealthresearch.com and then use coupon code TURLEY at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there is zero risk in trying something new. So why wait? Head on over to purehealthresearch.com right now, explore their 45 amazing supplements, and save 35% off before this deal ends with coupon code TURLEY. Don't miss this chance to feel your best. And it looks like as of now, as of today, or I should say as of the last few days, China is clearly recognizing that. For example, one of the first signs that China was starting to break involved their plastics factories. So Chinese plastics factories depend on a gas called ethane that they mainly import from the United States. Ethane is a petrochemical feedstock that's also a component of natural gas. But because of the tariffs, Chinese plastics companies that can't produce their own ethane, and by the way, they can't, they're going under because of the inordinate costs, with the Chinese government imposing 125% tariff on ethane. But if Chinese plastics companies go under, then the whole of the Chinese plastics industry shuts down. And given that plastics are pretty much, for right or for wrong, used for everything, that would only end up shutting down much of the economy. And lo and behold, looky what we're seeing here. China just removed their 125% retaliatory tariff on all ethane imports from the United States. This, according to Reuters. And that's where it just starts. We're now getting reports that China is very quietly, but very deliberately removing tariffs on American goods all across the board. We're talking companies in sectors like aviation, industrial chemicals. They're all saying that their products are being granted a reprieve. The president of the American Chamber of Commerce in China, okay, this is the president of the American Chamber of Commerce inside China, is telling Reuters that some pharmaceutical company members of his organization are informing him that they too are importing products from the United States tariff-free. China's exempting aircraft engines, landing gear, all kinds of parts. Gatestone is reporting that China they're secretly waiving tariffs on U.S. imports, including certain semiconductors, industrial chemicals, and medical devices. All of this adds up to one thing when all is said and done. It is a clear Chinese cave-in its trade conflict with Trump. That's coming explicitly from Gatestone. That's what Gatestone is calling it. This is China blinking. This is China caving. Now, of course, China cannot possibly openly admit that. Xi Jinping's regime simply cannot admit that they're not able to stand up to Washington, D.C. But they're not. I mean, economically, China, at least now, is no match for the United States, especially given the fact that we're the debtor nation. China is certainly formidable, certainly powerful. It may one day very well surpass the United States. Jacques Martin's thesis is correct. His book, When China Rules the World, they may very well end up ruling the world in another decade or so. But right now, they're not the United States. They can't do that. They're not Western economies as a whole. And so there are all of these tacit admissions that China is indeed folding under the weight of Trump's tariffs. Take a look at this. This is fascinating. Zero Hedge is reporting that on April 24th, about a dozen, you heard that right, dozen Chinese officials, including a high-ranking official from the Chinese Ministry of Finance, were seen entering the U.S. Treasury's main building in Washington at about 7 a.m., 7 in the morning, as Chinese security officials attempted to prevent photographers from recording the entry. Again, this from Zero Hedge. So clearly, if this report is true, clearly the Chinese are coming to the negotiation table and they are learning firsthand the art of the deal. Now, what's so fascinating in all of this is how effectively Trump is unraveling the globalist economic order, and China is having to learn the new rules here, as it were, of a post-globalist world. Now, at one level, China has, these last several years, been very busy trying to help construct a parallel global economy to that of the G7 in the form of what's called BRICS. And we've talked a lot about on this channel about the significance of the BRICS bloc as an alternative parallel economy to that of the G7 and the IMF and the WTO and the like. No, BRICS is already an extraordinarily formidable economic bloc, no question. With the incorporation of the 3 OPEC nations of late, it already is controlling nearly half the world's oil supply. It's absolutely astonishing, amazing stuff. But that said, China is still very, very dependent on the globalist G7 Bretton Woods system for its GDP, since so much of its exports have been dependent on that system. And the irony here is that China really began to economically explode after its incorporation into the World Trade Organization back in 1971. China became one of the major economies of this rising globalist world order. Now, Western nations were hoping that admitting China into the club, as it were, would encourage China to liberalize, to embrace more liberal political norms. That, of course, did not happen. But regardless, the irony here is that China's economy exploded within the globalist system and under its primary institutions like the IMF or the World Bank, and most especially the WTO, the World Trade Organization. What's happening as we speak is that Trump is effectively smashing this globalist world order. And instead, he's replacing that world order with the return of mercantilism that sees trade as an extension of national security. And in instituting the return of mercantilism, he is reestablishing a form of economic nationalism, but now in the guise of what we might call economic civilizationalism, where global economies are now being increasingly organized more around great power blocks around the world. And what Trump is doing, particularly with these tariffs and these bilateral trade negotiations with over 70 countries worldwide, is he's completely eclipsing globalist institutions like the WTO. In fact, the WTO has been rendered so irrelevant that it could frankly disappear off the face of the planet right now and no one would ever know. The globalist institutions that help make China the number 2 economy in the world have basically been rendered utterly irrelevant at this point. It's not institutions. They just don't exist anymore for China to rely on. Now, it's just Trump. It's Trump and the art of the deal. So if China wants to continue to be a player in the non-BRICS economy, the economy outside of the BRICS bloc, it's going to have to now comply with Trump and the new mercantilism in a manner comparable to how it complied with the old Bretton Woods system. This ultimately is why China was in no position to fight a prolonged trade war with Trump. Because Trump basically owns that system now, for right or for wrong. I'm being purely descriptive, not prescriptive. Trump owns that Bretton Woods system now. And China is going to have to ultimately comply with his demands one way or another. By the way, click on the link in the description below to get all these articles and tweets I reference throughout my videos emailed to you each and every day. You're going to love it. We want you to have the best resources out there to convince your family and your friends of this new MAGA super age that's rising here.